Welcome to NARAL's The Morning After. Each Thursday, our podcast brings you the latest on reproductive health care, progressive politics, and the fight to keep abortion safe and legal. NARAL's The Morning After is a production of NARAL Pro-Choice Ohio. Find us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram at Pro-Choice OH. Enjoy the show.
Hi, I'm Gabe.
I'm Jaime.
And I'm Vashitta. So today's topic, where we left off last week, so we were in the middle of our podcast and they were also in the middle of the AHCA.
Yes.
And do we want to talk about what happened with that? The result? I know, big sigh.
God, I don't want to have to acknowledge it, but yes, it should be discussed.
Absolutely.
Please proceed.
We have seen that the House went ahead and passed so the repeal, and now we're just looking at, the Senate and kind of going from there. We know that I'm not sure the opinions, but if it does go through, there's going to be so many people that are affected by this. And, it's just something that we're all just kind of shaking our heads at this point.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think I guess there's not really a worse thing. I was about to say the worst thing, but it was, there's so many bad things.
Yeah.
But one of the most ridiculous, I guess, parts of it was the Rose Garden celebration afterwards.
The whole thing of beer that they brought up afterwards to celebrate the lives of people who will actually lose their lives.
Yeah. Or, a bunch of white people sitting around in the fancy Rose Garden talking about taking away people's health care.
Yeah.
Right. That was tacky. Statement from our national office following the vote. Americans did not vote to have their health care taken away or to have their access to birth control cut off. The popularity of the Affordable Care Act of Obamacare proves that, period. Millions have marched in the streets, called their representatives, and protested at town halls to protect women's access to health care, and our 1.2 million member activists, that's NARAL, will keep rising up in protest and demanding their leaders expand women's freedom and equality.
Yeah.
The Senate sounds like they're going to completely rewrite. Like they took the House version and threw it in the trash, and they're like, no, fuck this, we're going to rewrite our own bill. Ohio's Rob Portman looks like he's on the group of 13 white men that are going to be writing specifically the women's health portions of the bill.
Yes.
What the fuck?
Are we surprised?
No.
Yeah.
The thing is, we've proven time and time again that Susan Collins can shut any of this shit down. She's a Republican, but leans much more independent, senator from Maine. And so, why just not invite her into the room?
Right.
And it was interesting. I was listening. I can't even remember what I was listening to, but they were talking about how they actually, a Republican staffer basically said, Mitch McConnell just doesn't see a problem with that. So he didn't even think that he needed women on it. He's so out of touch that he was just like, 13 white men is totally fine.
Right.
I don't even know if we should comment on that. It just seems so egregious and just, I don't even know.
Mitch McConnell, Turtle Man.
Yeah, let's have a conversation about women's reproductive rights and their health care and not invite them because their opinion doesn't matter. So
yeah, just add a woman to the group so that you can say, hey, this isn't all guys.
Exactly.
It's like the basic level thing.
And because no man in there has to actually have a baby or any of the other circumstances that women have to deal with, you can't really sit there and say that you know exactly what you're doing.
Right. So the fallout from this continues. There's video of multiple representatives trying to explain this to their constituents because they're all in the districts.
No one dies because they don't have access to health care.
Right. That's like the quote from one of the members who was immediately shouted down by his own constituents. Like, what the hell are you talking about?
And it shows how oblivious they really are.
And then he did a apology saying that he was just ineloquent in his statement. I'm like, no, dude, you were factually inaccurate in your statement.
That was just a terrible comment. But he was describing a terrible bill. So, what more do you expect? Everybody should be contacting Rob Portman to let him know that, we don't want the ACA destroyed, and that women's, being a woman should not be a pre-existing condition.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So it's not the only craziness in Washington. Really, I would say just only craziness takes place in Washington.
At this point, that is accurate.
As everybody knows, Donald Trump fired the head of the FBI. People are looking at this and asking, is this, or they're not even asking. They're just saying, hey, this is obstruction of justice, which is an impeachable offense.
Yeah.
As to, Mitch McConnell, he said that he doesn't want to appoint a special prosecutor. He doesn't really see anything wrong with this. Everyone else is saying, no, that's a little horseshit.
Yeah.
So, I mean, you think that maybe this is the first step towards Trump getting his butt booted out the door,
I so doubt it, though.
Yeah, me too.
I mean, I think you got to wait at least until 2018 because the Republicans are never going to do it. They're never going to admit that they nominated and then worked to elect a guy who shouldn't be in the White House. Mitch McConnell, I just don't see that. And frankly, although it might, avert nuclear war or something, Mike Pence.
That's a worthwhile goal.
Yes, Mike Pence elevating himself to presidency really isn't all that much better for the people of the United States. So, maybe a slightly more actually capable person, but the policy is just as bad. So maybe actually worse because he would then actually implement some of said policies.
Sure.
I'm not sure that impeachment is.
I think if I'm a Rob Portman who is, solidly conservative, but not raving lunatic conservative. If I'm, of those sort of base level Republicans, part of me thinks, okay, if Trump's going to end up getting impeached for some shit sooner or later, maybe we do this now so that they'll have more time between now and the next election cycle. If I was a Republican senator running in, 2018 is going to be just, a cluster no matter what.
Gosh, yeah.
But I think if you're running 2020, if you're looking at the presidential race and you want to preserve your party's grip on the White House, you say, okay, we need to fix this now rather than having it screw everything up later.
Yeah, well, but the Quinnipiac University poll came out, and it's really bad for Trump, like across the board. He's losing support of white men, which are like the last remaining group that haven't abandoned him already.
He basically picked Russians over law enforcement officers. What is that?
Yeah. I think even at this point, white men are getting upset and like, no, what are you doing? Like,
but there's still a solid core of like 34% of people who.
No, it's 34.
I was gonna say,
it is actually 34%, unfortunately, of people they polled are still saying he's doing a good job, and like 30, I think it was something like 38% of people thought his first 100 days were a success.
Can we kind of describe who maybe those people are? No, maybe not. Okay.
I don't know who those people are because, like, dude, I don't know. Like, people who don't have a grip on reality, I think.
Yeah.
But but that's also to describe them. It's the Republican base.
Right.
So Rob Portman can piss those people off and think he's going to be the Republican nominee too. So I think they've got to play this really interesting game of, do you abandon your base or do you abandon independence? And either one of them is a losing proposition for them.
Right.
Damn if you do, damn if you don't.
Darn shucks. Maybe you shouldn't have elected a crazy person, but whatever.
Well, we're not the only ones trying to figure out what'll happen in 2020. It's very clear that John Kasich is too. He's written a book.
Really?
Yeah, right. And
he's so subtle.
Writing a book is like the one thing you do either before you run for president or after you finish being president. And so Kasich's got his book out and he's doing his book tour. So it's got him, across the country, especially in like Iowa, New Hampshire, doing book signings.
Yeah.
I think it's clear that he's expecting Trump to not be running again or not running on solid footing. And he wants to be in position to potentially challenge. That's how I read
that
a
sounds
book tour.
About right.
Yeah.
I'm gonna have to agree with you on that one, Gabe. It's as much as you think he's trying to be inconspicuous, you're not. Like we just kind of see right through that. So
right.
Yeah, he's challenged Trump basically on every single thing he's done recently. I think he even spoke out about the Comey stuff. He's definitely spoken out against the whatever the healthcare.
AHCA.
Yes, there it is. And, and getting rid of the Medicaid expansion and all those things. I mean, every single time Trump does anything, Kasich is there saying, nah, I don't agree with that.
Right.
So yeah, he's definitely positioning himself to run for governor. Governor for president.
Right. Yeah. I think you're 34 people. Kasich knows that he's not going to win them off right off the bat. So I think he's going for the independents, the more moderate side of the Republican Party, because if Trump does something even worse than this, or if this ends up being enough to really bite him in the butt, then I think Kasich's positioning himself to be like, hey, let's get back to normal Republican. Right. Not that Kasich's version of being a normal Republican is in any way good for people.
Right.
Mr. 18 abortion restrictions since he became governor. Yes.
Right.
He's still definitely not a moderate and definitely conservative and definitely not good for the country.
But he's also not Donald Trump.
Yes,
so.
Exactly.
Well, he's Mike Pence with a different haircut.
Yes.
Oh, goodness.
Yeah, like Kasich, Mike Pence, Scott Walker, they were, all these sort of seriously conservative, let's destroy women's rights for political gain governors from the Midwest. And I think Kasich, he's plotting a strategy. The other thing about presidential politics that kind of got me wondering, and national politics, yesterday we were standing on the side of the road waiting to protest Paul Ryan. The Speaker of the House came to Columbus, to Central Ohio yesterday. We joined with the State Democratic Party, with labor unions, with Planned Parenthood, other groups.
Yeah, Indivisible was there. Yeah.
Yes, big protest to give a warm welcome.
There were some air quotes for our listeners only.
Right. To let the Speaker of the House know that him and his healthcare plans are not welcome here.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think we had a pretty good turnout. I didn't do an accurate count, but I would say maybe around 100 people or so. What do you think?
Yeah, and that's what the news report said. So yeah,
give or take. And it was definitely the perfect weather to say, we don't want you. Like, this is not what we're looking for, and you need to do better. But thoughts on how it went? I think it went pretty well. We didn't actually hear the speech, but I heard that when they asked him about defiring the FBI director, he kind of fell silent and didn't respond. So
yeah,
kind of ignored it.
The tweets from the reporter said that they were instructed that he won't be answering questions, so they shouldn't shout them anyways. And I was like, that's not
how it works.
That's not how it works at all.
Maybe he should have hidden the bushes with Sean Spicer.
Oh, gosh. I did not realize that was an actual thing till I said this is an actual thing. And I was just like, what
not
is happening here?
Article. Yes. Not an Onion article.
Oh my gosh.
But it makes me, it makes me wonder what Paul Ryan was doing in Central Ohio. I mean, he's not from here. He is the Speaker of the House, so that kind of makes him a national politician. But what are you doing in Columbus, Paul?
Well, he was here for Steve Stivers. It was an event with our congressman from Central Ohio, Steve Stivers.
Right.
But I also don't know exactly what Steve Stivers was up to. I mean, why do you bring Paul Ryan in to do this?
Right.
Just photo op. I mean, it wasn't a rally. It wasn't anything. I mean, they toured a plant and a coffee plant. I couldn't even tell what packaging they were doing from the pictures, but
there was something about fishing equipment. I have no idea.
Yeah, I have no idea what it was. I saw a picture and they had packages in front of them that kind of looked like coffee, which is why I just said coffee.
We stood outside the building for over 2 hours, and to me it was like generic warehouse. So.
Yeah.
I think he could have been trying to give Stivers a boost, maybe in exchange for Stivers supporting Paul Ryan's piece of legislation. This could have been fundraising to help out, any number of members of the Ohio congressional delegation, maybe Pat Tiberi.
Do nothing, Tiberi.
Do you think there's any chance Paul Ryan came to a swing state for the same reason that Kasich wrote a book?
Whoa.
Maybe.
I don't know if I'd put it out of the realm of possibility, but I don't know.
Nowadays, you can't rule anything out though. So.
Right. I mean, the one thing that Paul Ryan's really, the two things are that he hasn't perfectly lined up behind Trump. And he wrote this bill that, really rich people seem to love.
Because it gave him a huge tax break.
Right.
Even Warren Buffett was like, I don't need that extra
Yeah.
17% of my income.
Not
Thanks.
at all. Thank
Right.
you.
So, I mean, it does make me kind of wonder, is Paul Ryan setting himself up for a potential, presidential primary challenge by, sort of showing that he's his own person and making sure people in Central Ohio see him. I don't know that this wasn't a test balloon just to see, hey, let's
You
see
might
how
be
I do with
right.
the
I think we
Central
have
Ohio
to
media.
continue to look at his patterns from here on out and see, because I think that would show a lot about what he's maybe potentially planning to do.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
I don't
Who
know.
knows? I can't predict anything in politics
Yeah,
anymore.
absolutely. Not anymore. Not
Yeah.
after this.
Yeah, but just for the few people who got our email letting them know that we'd be giving them a warm welcome, and they wrote back kind of confused. Warm welcome means protest.
Yes.
Absolutely.
So anytime Paul Ryan comes to town, we'll be protesting against him. So
Yes. Or any of those folks.
yeah.
Exactly.
so that's the story with national politics. I guess we'll keep seeing and keep protesting.
Yeah.
So you want to talk about what's happening at the State House?
Not really, but whatever.
Yeah, I know, right?
So yesterday morning, we started the day. What a great way to spend your hour from 9 a.m. to 10 a.m.
Right.
Testifying before the Ohio House Health Committee on House Bill 149. It's the ridiculous bill that we don't need because the transfer of fetal tissue from abortion in Ohio was already illegal.
They're going to
wanna
make it double illegal.
Yeah, they're going to make it more illegal. They say it's about making everything equal, but it actually makes everything unequal because it segments out fetal tissue from abortion and abortion providers from all other tissue, including fetal tissue from miscarriages,
Right.
and all the other doctors and all those kinds of things.
Which was a point raised by one of the Republican
Yes.
committee members. He said, hey, wait a minute. Isn't this creating inequality
Mhm.
in the law?
Yeah, definitely. So it is 100%. He actually missed my testimony. So when he asked me that question, I was kind of like, it's actually what 90% of my testimony was about. So thanks. But no, they literally questioned me for an hour.
Yeah.
My testimony was required to be limited to 5 minutes. So 5 minutes
Yes.
of that hour was my testimony. The other 55 minutes was questioning. Some from our folks, and that was awesome.
Yeah.
Representative Bernadine Kennedy Kent from Central Ohio.
This is the first time we've really heard from her substantially.
Yeah, she's asked some questions in the previous hearings, but she definitely, she and Representative Michelle Lepore-Hagan from the Youngstown area were both really keyed in on this, because one of the parts of the bill is that it uses a non-medical term to define a physician who performs abortion. So they're going to codify the anti-choice pejorative term abortionist into Ohio Revised Code.
Right.
And, so they were really keyed into, doesn't that create an environment where we could be breeding more violence against providers? And isn't this, the videos that this is, the false videos that we saw in 2015. So this is still, Ohio Right to Life trying to capitalize over these videos, which have been proven false time and time again, a full 2 years later. Isn't that breeding violence? And, so we got to have that conversation, which was a really great conversation.
Right.
The ranking minority member, Representative Nikki Antonio, also asked some great questions. Representative West as well. And then, of course, we had the Republicans who were just off the charts. And they kind of fell on three ways. Number one, why are you opposing it if it doesn't happen? Because that's the whole point of this. It's already illegal. Right. We're making it more illegal. And it doesn't happen here. So they're like, well, if it doesn't happen, why are you opposing it? Well, because it's creating this whole separate system and separate, laws and everything, and stigmatizing and shaming the physicians who provide abortion and the patients who turn to them for care. Right. Don't support that. And then there's two doctors on the committee. So shockingly, finally, there's actual healthcare people hearing these bills. Both are Republicans. Well, they have cardiologists, and we call people nephrologists, and we call people obstetrician gynecologists.
That's the term that they use.
Yeah, exactly.
And it's also not a stigmatizing term,
right?
As abortionist is.
Yeah. So I
mean, if you had a heart surgeon and you wanted to call them like a heart butcher and put that into law, then they would come in and they would say,
point.
"Hey, we think that this name is inappropriate."
Exactly.
And I think that the thing that struck me on that as I was tweeting the hearing, politicians get called names all the time. We don't put those names into law.
Absolutely.
You know, that was one of the questions that you got from a representative that says, well, I've Googled the term abortionist and I found information online where people have used. Yeah, I'm like, not every word off the internet is appropriate for use in state law.
I think we teach you that when you're in grade school. Everything that you read on the internet is not true.
Right. Just because someone somewhere has used the term, you don't codify it.
And not only do we not put those terms that politicians are called into law, we don't refer to them by those terms either. So, you know, there's definitely that respect level that they want to be, that they want to have. So why not give that to someone who's just doing their job, a portion of their job.
Right.
Well, and I think they're also lost on this point, and I couldn't figure out exactly how to not go down a bad road by saying it in testimony, but I'll say it here because we're having a conversation. But so, you know, they kept telling, well, because I would start each one of my sentences with, you know, our abortion providers are proud of the services that they provide in our state because they provide necessary health care to the women who come to them for care. So they're proud of the work they do. They are not shy or scared or any of those things. They're scared of the protesters and getting killed because that has happened. But they are proud of the work that they do, and that's why they do it every day. And so they're like, well, why aren't they proud to be abortionists then?
They're like, proud to be doctors.
Yes. Well, and I think it's also, again, like you were saying, terms that you choose to use.
Absolutely.
And, you know, whether you get to call yourself something or someone else gets to call yourself something. You know, there are a lot of people in the LGBTQ community who call themselves queer. Does that mean that somebody walking down the street can look at you and say, hey, queer? No, it does not.
Definitely takes on a whole different meaning.
So, you know, it's about who is defining and who is doing the defining and what that term is.
Right. Yeah. And I mean, almost no circumstances would you put the word queer into law in a bill.
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, and then the ridiculousness didn't stop there. So we've talked about her on the podcast. Didn't we talk about her on the podcast before? Representative Keller is from Butler County.
Candace Keller.
I think we've mentioned her on the podcast before because a couple of weeks ago it was disclosed that she actually talked on a radio show of a white supremacist.
Oh yeah. She's the one who compared Planned Parenthood to Nazis on her Facebook page.
Yes. And then when reporters started doing digging, they found out that she had appeared on this white supremacist radio show. Yeah. But she didn't realize they were white supremacists.
Yeah, of course you didn't.
But so she's special. She also runs a crisis pregnancy center in Butler County. So you've heard us discuss those if you're longtime listeners. So she was extra special crazy in testimony yesterday, and just kept trying to say, well, Planned Parenthood is profiting off this. How much money are they profiting? How much, you know? And so every single one of my answers was back, it doesn't happen here. So no, that is not the case. It does not happen here.
Because almost alluding that it does happen though. The way she kept putting it, and we're like, no. She's like,
well, if there's 22,000 abortions and only half of them, so like 10,000 of them, does the tissue get sold?
And
like it doesn't happen, honey. Stop.
Yeah, she created a long series of hypotheticals that were full of just false garbage, and then said, what if this would happen? And then she did it again, and then she did it again.
Yeah.
It's like, stop asking. And the chair, this was really subtle, but if you were in the room, you saw it. The chair got tired of this, which normally Republican chairs let Republican members ask whatever questions they want to. It was really subtle, but he reined her in.
Yeah.
Where there was a point where she kept doing this and she kept doing this. And, you know, the members in a committee are supposed to ask permission for every question to the chair. You know, Mr. Chairman, may I ask whatever.
Right.
And then they get recognized by the chair. And so one time, and she did that, and he said, one more. And it was really sort of just small and quiet. But I'm sure that was him saying, okay, lady.
Well, and then she recognized that because she's like, well, that limits me. Like,
yes, it does.
It does, because you need to just cut it out. Yeah. So she was extra special.
And it was just a waste of time. I think that's probably what he thought too. You're wasting time at this point because you're just asking the same type of questions and she's giving you the same answer.
Yeah.
So,
and it's always hard in those kind of situations when you're the person getting grilled to like figure out how it's going.
Yeah.
I realized. So
You did an amazing job, by the way.
Thank you. Representative LaTourette, the woman who introduced a bill we're going to talk about in a minute. So she's not our friend in any way, shape, or form. At one point looked over at her like, girl, you're nuts. Like, and so I knew that at that point I was like, all right, good. You know, even the people who agree with her are thinking she's crazy, then
right.
So yeah, that was interesting. And then after I went for an hour, we had another person come in and testify. Jessie Hill, she's an amazing constitutional law expert, who also is a professor and associate dean at the Case Western Reserve University.
And very much qualified, may I add?
Yeah.
Speaking on her own behalf, not representing the university.
Yes. Speaking on her own behalf. She's also like on the board of preterm and does a lot of this work. She's the lawyer arguing the preterm v. Kasich case against the 2013 budget as well. Yeah. So she is a highly regarded attorney, and her testimony was along the same line as mine. This is unnecessary and cruel and stigmatizing and all these things. And the first question that was asked by Representative Niraj Antani, who, if you remember, was the one who like was ridiculous before. Actually, it's ridiculous in every hearing.
Yeah.
He while chewing gum. Too, actually, I realized when he asked me questions, he was smacking on his gum, and it was actually like, dude, respect for 2 seconds. But anyway, the first question that got asked to Jessie Hill was, "Can you tell me a little bit more about your legal background?"
And she literally murdered it.
Oh, like, she did, because Jessie
it was
Hill
amazing.
Graduated with her undergraduate degree from Brown University. Did her postgraduate work at Yale University.
And what law school did she graduate from?
She graduated magna cum laude from law school at Harvard.
Yes.
So, dear Niraj Antani, maybe you shouldn't do the, hey, you're a lady lawyer.
After she did, he was so quiet, and he kind of got up and left. I don't know if he already meant to leave.
Oh, he didn't mean to leave.
He was extremely over his head on that one. So yeah.
Yeah. I left. Representative Bernadine Kennedy Kent actually followed him in questioning, like, wow, that was a really impressive resume.
Exactly. Like, and good for her. You know, like, don't antagonize people like that. And what was the point?
No. You're a lady lawyer. I don't trust that you know what you're talking about.
Exactly.
Yeah. Professor Hill did very good in closing it out.
Mm-hmm. She was the one, though, that finally elicited the Holocaust reference out of Rep. Keller.
Oh, God.
She didn't go there with me. It was probably one of the other 500 questions she wanted to ask me, but was cut off by
Absolutely.
But yeah, her first question to Professor Hill was a comparison between abortion and Nazis. So yeah.
Yeah, I mean, she's. I know she doesn't have many Jewish constituents in her district, but they all have to be, anybody who understands what the Holocaust was is insulted by that.
Yeah.
People who've gotten women's health care, including abortions, from any one of these providers is insulted by that. The wide swath of voters that she's pissing off just by making such a horribly irresponsible reference. Yeah. God, just cut it out.
My thoughts exactly.
Okay, so that was the third hearing for this bill. So it's had sponsor, proponent, and now opponent out of the House Health Committee. It could be voted out of committee at any time. We'll keep an eye on that. There's some other stuff. Do we want to quickly touch upon what else is moving?
Down the pipeline.
Yeah. So 2 bills have been introduced in the last 2 weeks. One in the Senate to ban as another abortion method ban that could ban a method used to terminate pregnancy as early as 13 to 16 weeks. So we've seen this 6-week ban, we've seen the 20-week ban. So this one could ban certain procedures starting around 13 weeks.
This is Senate Bill 145, the abortion method ban.
Yes. And then 2 days ago, Tuesday, we saw House Bill 214 be introduced. This is a retread of a bill from last year. This is where Representative LaTourette is going to come back up because she is the main sponsor of this bill, banning abortion after a prenatal diagnosis of Down syndrome, so that if you were facing this complication of pregnancy and fetal so they would say you can't, in this one circumstance, cannot terminate. Yes.
Just because the child has Down syndrome.
Yes.
So I'm going to put a link in the show notes. After this bill was introduced 2 years ago, the first time around, we heard from several parents of children who have children that they're raising. The child has Down syndrome.
Yes.
These are parents that love their child.
Absolutely.
Do not want the decision as to whether or not you're allowed to terminate a pregnancy. They don't want that decision taken away from parents who might find themselves in a similar situation.
Yeah.
David Perry wrote one of these articles on CNN.com. Really terrific. His son has Down syndrome. He's a very outspoken advocate for people with disabilities. Huge Twitter following. Really great article that he wrote about Ohio's bill 2 years ago. So we'll put that in the links. It's really a must read to help you understand, what do people experience as, potential parents getting this diagnosis, what, goes through their minds. And he provides some great insight. So, it's a sensitive bill. But I think, there's a common sense solution that you don't remove options from parents who really need options.
I definitely think it's overstepping boundaries. I mean, having a child with special needs, you have to have that financial capability. You have to have that mental, the emotional, all of that plays an aspect. And there are certain families who may not be able to handle that, or, just if it's going to create any mental distress as well. I mean, they definitely, like you said, need to have those options. Having that taken away is just something that's going to create more chaos, I think, among, families.
Right.
Well, and I think something else we pointed out last time too is that then the state of Ohio doesn't support these families either. We underfund special education in our schools. I mean, the first version of the budget, they've fixed it at this point, totally dismantled a financial program that helped families with healthcare expenses associated with childhood disabilities and new medical diagnoses that helps kind of with that initial push to, buy all the crap you have to when your kid is diagnosed with things like epilepsy or diabetes or those kinds of things. So obviously the state doesn't care about supporting those kids,
right?
But we want to force families to bring them into the world. So
if they know they don't have the means to do it. Exactly.
Right. Yeah. Legislators actively shot down an amendment to provide that additional assistance last time around. Also, the very first sentence out of the mouth of the bill sponsor when she first introduced this was, not every family is equipped to handle a child with Down syndrome. It's like, that's why you don't pass this bill.
Exactly.
Bill sponsor. Sarah Latourette.
Yes.
Okay, so that's what we're watching at the State House, plus the state budget, which has headed off to the Senate. We're making sure that no new abortion restrictions get inserted into that. So we'll keep an eye on that. Listen next time for more updates on state legislation. We're running short on time, so let's go to Let's Get It On and talk about Pride. So you're going to be heading up to the Pride table.
So, I'm on board. And so now it's time for us to get ready for Pride season. It officially starts in June. So, we have Dayton Pride. We have Pride.
Dayton's on June 2nd.
June 2nd. We have Pride in the CLE, which is June 3rd. We have Athens Pride, which is June 10th. Actually, the 11th, I believe, June 11th was the Sunday.
It's that weekend, yeah.
So we have June 16th, which is Columbus Pride. The 24th, Cleveland Pride. Also June 24th is Cincinnati, and then July 29th. No, June 29th is Youngstown. It's so many.
Yes.
You have ComFest, and that is
ComFest is June 23rd through 25th,
okay.
And that's something we do with the Freedom of Choice Ohio Coalition.
Okay. And then we have Toledo Pride, which is August 18th and 19th.
Right. So a full month of Pride festivals plus ComFest. We'll have information for people to volunteer in the show notes if you want to come to any of those. And we'll also be sending out emails.
Absolutely.
So.
And we'll be actually seeing if anyone wants to come help, volunteers. We need plenty. So we'll be sending out emails for that as well.
Cool.
And then one more addition on the Let's Get It On. If you are interested in testifying against any of these bills, email us as well. You can email us at info@prochoiceohio.org.
What about personal stories?
Personal stories are always welcome. You can email them there, or actually there is a personal story link on our website at prochoiceohio.org.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Testify, or even if you just want to come and sit in committee
Yeah.
and sit beside
Absolutely.
me and tweet
Mhm.
snarky things.
Yes.
So always welcome. Okay. We'll see everybody next week.
Bye.
Bye.